Hi, quick hello. This is an original Tales First story about a family crossing a line and realizing someone won't just take it. Let's begin.
My ex-in-laws invited me to a family wedding to humiliate me as a discarded mistake. "Come see what a real wife looks like," the invite said. I didn't cry. I showed up with my daughter, and that's when the wedding became a nightmare. It showed up on a Tuesday, because of course it did. If Evelyn Harrington could schedule my humiliation on a shared calendar, she would. Rachel, my assistant, my human firewall, the only person in this building who can look at chaos and say nope without flinching, walked into my office holding a thick cream envelope like it was contagious. "Jenna," she said carefully, "some guy downstairs wouldn't leave until I signed for it. Certified mail. Signature confirmation." I looked up from my laptop. I was mid-call notes, trying to translate a client's vague dream of something viral but classy into actual words that wouldn't get us sued. "Signature required?" I repeated. Rachel nodded. "He had a whole clipboard. He acted like he was delivering a kidney." That was when I saw the return address. Harrington Estate outside Charlotte. Rachel watched my face do that tiny freeze it does when my past knocks. "Oh," she said, quieter. That Harrington," I confirmed. Rachel's hand hovered near the shredder button like she was ready to end a bloodline. "Say the word." 5 years ago, I would have said it. I would have pretended I didn't care and then cried in my car like an overachiever. Now, I just stared at the envelope. It was expensive, textured, heavy, the kind of paper that whispers, "We have generational wealth and the audacity to match." And then, because the universe likes consistency, the perfume hit me through the seal. Evelyn's perfume. It didn't smell like flowers. It smelled like control. Rachel leaned in. "Do you want me to open it? Like, with gloves?" "No," I said. "If they're going to insult me, I want the full sensory experience." I slid my finger under the seal and opened it. The invitation inside was absurd. Gold foil, letterpress, a watercolor illustration of the Harrington estate like the venue was the real bride. "Preston Harrington and Catherine Monroe request the honor of your presence." For half a second, my brain tried to do the old trick. Pretend this was normal. Pretend I was just a guest. Pretend time hadn't happened. Then I saw the smaller card tucked behind the invitation. Not printed. Handwritten. Evelyn's handwriting was elegant in the way a knife can be elegant. I read it once. Then again, because I wanted to be sure my eyes weren't exaggerating. "Come see what a real wife looks like." Rachel made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a growl. "Oh my God." My stomach did that familiar twist, the one that used to pull me into a smaller version of myself. And then it stopped. Not because it didn't hurt, because I wasn't that woman anymore. Evelyn hadn't sent this because she wanted me at the wedding. She sent it because she wanted me at home, imagining it. Sitting alone, picturing Preston under fairy lights, marrying a woman Evelyn approved of, while I stayed the shameful footnote. Rachel said, "You don't have to go." "I know," I replied. She waited for me to say I'd toss it. Instead, I opened the RSVP link on my phone and clicked accept. Rachel's eyebrows jumped. "Jenna, I'm going," I said, calm. Rachel blinked like she'd misheard. "Why would you do that to yourself?" I looked at her. Then I said the sentence that changed everything. "And I'm bringing Lily." Rachel's mouth fell open. "Your daughter." "My 5-year-old daughter," I confirmed. Rachel stared at me, then at the envelope, then back at me. So, we're not going to sit quietly near the bathroom and pretend we don't exist. I smiled, sharp. No, we're going to be polite. Rachel narrowed her eyes. Aggressively. Exactly, I said. I slid the invitation into my desk drawer like it was a contract, because that's what it was. Evelyn had invited me to be humiliated. I was going to show up with the truth. I met Preston Harrington at a waterfront restaurant in Charlotte called South Shore, the kind of place where the menu uses words like deconstructed and everyone pretends that's normal. I was 25, working double shifts, saving for night classes, and trying to keep my life from sliding off the table. Preston walked in with a group of guys in button-downs and expensive watches, celebrating something that involved the word portfolio and too many drinks they didn't pay for themselves. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He was polished. Calm voice, steady eye contact. The kind of man who makes you feel like you're the only person he can see. He asked my name and listened like it mattered. He tipped well. He came back the next week, then the next. He was charming in a way that felt safe, like adulthood with good lighting. When he finally asked me out, it didn't feel like a risk. It felt like relief. For a while, it was good. Preston took me to nice places, but he also came over to my tiny apartment and ate takeout on the couch like a normal person. He remembered details. He held my hand. He said he admired how hard I worked. I didn't realize he was also carefully managing my exposure to his family like I was an allergen. The first time I asked about his mom, he said, "She can be intense." How intense? I asked. He hesitated. She cares. That was his favorite word for her, cares. Not controls, not dominates, not emotionally annexes entire rooms, cares. The first time I went to the Harrington estate, I knew I was entering a different ecosystem. The house wasn't cozy, it wasn't lived in, it was curated. Like joy had to be approved by a committee. Evelyn came down the staircase in pearls because of course she did. Evelyn didn't wear casual. Evelyn wore power. She kissed Preston's cheek and held his face like she was checking for scratches. Then she turned to me. "So, you're Jenna," she said, stretching my name out like it was a foreign object. "Yes," I replied. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Harrington." "Oh," she said sweetly. "Please, Evelyn." Translation: "I'm going to be in your life forever." She smiled. She didn't look mean. She looked assessing. "What do you do, dear?" she asked. "I work in marketing." Her eyes flicked down to my shoes and back to my face. "How modern." I smiled because I didn't yet understand what was happening. I still thought adults said what they meant. Dinner that night was a performance, and I didn't know the script. Evelyn asked questions that weren't really questions. Where did I grow up? What did my parents do? What schools did I attend? Did I cook? Did I plan to keep working after marriage? Every answer I gave seemed to become evidence. If I sounded confident, I was ambitious in the dangerous way. If I sounded humble, I was insecure. If I laughed, I was trying too hard. If I stayed quiet, I was sulking. Preston sat beside me, silent, occasionally squeezing my hand under the table like a private apology. I needed him to speak out loud. He didn't. On the drive home, I asked, "Does your mother hate me?" Preston stared at the road like it had answers. "She doesn't hate you." Then, carefully, "She just has standards." Standards. The kind you can't meet if you weren't born into them. When Preston proposed, I was genuinely happy. It was just us, near the water, and for one bright minute I believed love would outrank Evelyn's control. A week later, Evelyn invited me to discuss logistics. Logistics. Like love was a shipment. She slid a folder across a glass table. A prenup. I understood prenups. I wasn't naive. People protect assets. Fine. But Evelyn didn't treat it like protection. She treated it like proof I wasn't family. Preston sat there and didn't argue, didn't soften it, didn't even look at me long enough to be brave. I signed anyway, because I still believed marriage meant he would finally choose me. I didn't understand that Preston had been trained his entire life to confuse peace with obedience. Preston wasn't cruel. That's what made it confusing. He didn't insult me. He didn't hit me. He didn't cheat, at least not in the traditional sense. He just didn't protect me. He worked long hours. He avoided conflict like it was a disease. He let Evelyn help with everything, and by help, I mean she invaded. She fixed my kitchen because my taste was too youthful. She replaced our towels because mine were thin. She critiqued my groceries like I was poisoning her son. "Whole milk," she'd say, horrified. "Jenna, cholesterol." Every holiday at the estate was a test I didn't know I was taking. Evelyn would compliment me in ways that were actually insults. "Oh, Jenna, you're so grounded," she'd say. "It must be so hard coming from such a simple background. You're doing your best." Preston would squeeze my knee under the table and later in the car say, "She didn't mean it." And I'd think, then what does she mean when she speaks? The worst part was how it changed me. I started editing myself before I even opened my mouth. I rehearsed sentences in my head like I was preparing for trial. My own home stopped feeling like mine. Then, 3 years in, I got pregnant, and everything became efficient. Evelyn invited me for tea at the estate on a weekday afternoon. No witnesses, no distractions. Perfect conditions for emotional demolition. The tea set was white and delicate. The room was bright and cold. Everything looked untouched, like no one had ever cried there. Evelyn didn't say congratulations. She didn't ask how I felt. She said, "We need to fix this before it becomes public." I blinked. "Fix what?" "The situation," she said, smoothing her napkin like she was smoothing me out. "Preston is not ready, and frankly, neither are you." My hands went cold. "I'm his wife," I said, because I needed reality to do something. Evelyn smiled gently. "You're temporary, Jenna. Don't confuse a signature with security." Then she slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check with more zeros than I'd ever seen in one place, and a stack of papers, neatly clipped, like she'd done this before. A marital settlement agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, a clean exit. "I can be generous," Evelyn said softly, "if you do the sensible thing." "You want me to leave," I said. "I want you to be realistic," she corrected. "A baby would complicate Preston's life." "A baby is part of life," I said, and my voice shook in a way I hated. "In your world, perhaps," Evelyn replied, like I was describing a different planet. "And if I don't?" I asked. Her eyes didn't change, but the air did. "If you don't," she said, "you'll walk away with nothing, and you'll still lose." I left that house shaking. That night I told Preston I was pregnant. For one breath, something flickered in his face, shock, joy trying to fight through fear. Then I told him what his mother did. I waited for him to explode. I waited for him to finally choose me. Preston rubbed his forehead and said, "Maybe she's just trying to protect me." Protect him from his own child. from his own wife, from me. That sentence didn't just hurt. It clarified everything. 2 weeks later, divorce papers arrived through attorneys, like my marriage was a business deal that had gone out of warranty. Preston didn't call. He didn't come. He didn't fight. It became an uncontested divorce in family court. Short hearing, board clerk, a judge who asked if I understood what I was signing. I understood perfectly. I was signing myself out of a cage. Before my 3rd trimester, I moved to a small mountain town where no one knew the Harrington name. I gave birth in a beige county hospital with a nurse who squeezed my hand and said, "Honey, you're gonna be okay," like she'd said it 1,000 times. I named my daughter Lily because I needed something in my life that grew without permission. The first year was survival. Diapers, night feeds, panic math, coffee that tasted like regret. I freelanced from a laptop balanced on my knees. Copywriting, social media, branding decks, anything that paid fast and didn't require childcare I couldn't afford. There were nights I cried quietly into a towel so I wouldn't wake Lily. There were mornings I stared at the fridge and tried to convince myself that peanut butter counts as a meal, and then, because the universe has a weird sense of humor, I got good. Really good. I stopped writing cute captions and started building strategies. I learned how to make small businesses look like brands, how to make people click, buy, sign up, show up. It turns out when you've spent 3 years reading A Room for Danger, you get excellent at reading audiences. A boutique in Raleigh hired me. Their sales jumped. They told a friend. A friend told a founder. A founder called me and said, "I heard you're the one." By the time Lily was 3, I moved back to Charlotte. Not to chase ghosts, but because business was there. I rented a modest office, hired Rachel, and built a small agency that grew faster than my sleep schedule. Lily grew too, into a tiny person with glitter shoes and blunt honesty. At 5, she could negotiate for dessert like a tiny attorney and stare at rude adults like they were confusing. So when the Harrington invitation arrived, I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I thought, Evelyn really believes I'm still the woman she broke. Then I RSVP'd. Yes. I told Lily we were going to a party. Her eyes lit up. "Will there be cake?" "There will be cake," I promised, because I am not a monster. The night before the wedding, I laid out our outfits. Mine. Deep emerald, tailored, clean lines. Not flashy, not desperate. Just undeniable. Lily's dress matched, because subtlety is optional when someone invites you as a punchline. She watched me hold it up. "Mommy, why are we dressing fancy?" I brushed hair off her forehead. "Because sometimes people need to see you standing up." She considered that seriously, then pointed at her shoe shelf. "Glitter shoes?" "Absolutely," I said. "We'll be polite, aggressively." I packed snacks, wipes, a backup sweater. Motherhood is basically disaster preparedness with better mascara. Then I looked at myself in the mirror and thought about Preston. 5 years is a long time to ignore the existence of your child. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth to have good lighting and a front row seat. That Saturday, the Harrington wedding was held at the estate outside Charlotte, the kind of place where the driveway has a name and the mailbox looks like it votes. White chairs lined the lawn, flowers everywhere, a string quartet playing music that sounded like expensive sadness. There were valet attendants, champagne stations, and a coordinator with a tablet who looked like she'd seen every kind of chaos. Just not mine. We walked in, Lily's hand in mine, and I kept my face calm. Because here's the thing. The richest people in the room can smell fear like blood in water. A coordinator rushed up. "Hi, welcome. Name?" "Jenna Lewis," I said. Her fingers flew over the tablet. Her smile glitched. "Oh," she said too loudly. "Yes, you're here." Then quietly, like she was confessing, "Table 17. I leaned toward the seating chart. Table 17 was near the kitchen doors, close enough to the restroom that you could hear the hand dryer. Classic Evelyn. Bury the embarrassment near the plumbing. Lily looked up at me. "Where do we sit?" "With family," I said. The coordinator blinked. "Family seating is reserved." "Correct," I said, and walked past her. I took Lily straight to the front row, where little plaques read Harrington family, and sat down like it was the most natural thing in the world. The air changed. You could feel the wedding freeze mid-breath. Heads turned. Whispers started like wind catching. Evelyn stood near the archway in navy silk and pearls, smile set like dried paint. The moment she saw Lily, her mouth opened, then closed. Then she inhaled sharply, like she'd just realized the fire reached the curtains. Preston stood off to the side in a tux, laughing with groomsmen. He looked over, and his smile died. Because Lily has his eyes, not kind of, not maybe, storm gray, with one small golden fleck in the right iris like a tiny sun caught in a cloud. I knew that fleck. Evelyn knew it. And then an older man pushed through the crowd, moving with the irritated confidence of someone who has been right his whole life. Walter Harrington, Preston's uncle, a retired genetics professor who avoided family events like they were contagious. He stopped in front of Lily and softened his voice. "Hello, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Lily," she said, calm as a queen. Walter's eyes flicked to mine. "Jenna," he said quietly, like the name unlocked an old memory. I nodded once. He crouched slightly. "May I see your eyes up close?" Lily leaned forward because she is 5 and fearless and has never met a situation she couldn't investigate. Walter turned on his phone flashlight. Evelyn hissed behind me, "Walter, don't you dare!" Walter ignored her. He studied Lily's eye for maybe 2 seconds, then straightened and said, loud enough for half the wedding to hear, "Well, that's the Harrington fleck." Silence. The kind where people stop blinking because blinking might mean they miss the scandal. Someone laughed nervously. Someone gasped. A bridesmaid whispered, "Oh my God," like she'd been training for this moment. Walter continued, conversational, casually terrifying. "Rare trait," he said. "Preston has it. His father had it. I have it." He gestured toward Lily. "And now, she does too." Evelyn went pale under expensive foundation. Preston looked like his brain was rebooting. And then the bride appeared. Catherine, Kate Monroe, stepped up in her gown, perfect veil, perfect smile, until she saw Lily, Preston's face, and Evelyn's panic. Kate stared at Lily, then at Preston. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Preston," she said. "Who is that child?" Preston opened his mouth. No sound came out, because silence is easy when it protects you, not when it exposes you. Kate's eyes sharpened. "Did you know?" Preston swallowed. "No, I didn't." Evelyn stepped forward, bright voice ready. "Catherine, sweetheart, this is obviously some kind of..." Kate turned to her slowly. "You invited her," Kate said. Evelyn blinked. "Excuse me?" "You invited Jenna," Kate repeated, louder now. "You put her on the list. You brought her here." Evelyn tried to smile. "We wanted to be gracious." Kate laughed once, short and ugly. "So your grace is inviting your son's ex-wife to watch him marry someone else." while he has a 5-year-old daughter. Kate's father surged forward, furious, grabbing Preston by the lapels like he could shake the truth out of him. "You have got to be kidding me," he snapped. Phones rose like a wave. The quartet kept playing because musicians are trained to ignore human collapse. Evelyn reached for Kate's arm. "Let's go inside. Let's not do this here." Kate yanked away. "No!" Her voice shook now. "You wanted an audience. Congratulations." Then she looked at me. And here's the part people don't expect. She wasn't angry at me. She was furious at the lie. She lifted her veil off and let it drop onto the grass like a surrendered flag. "I'm done," she said. And she walked away down the aisle alone, her dress catching petals and dirt. Preston didn't follow. He couldn't move. Evelyn stood frozen, watching her masterpiece burn. I leaned down to Lily and whispered, "Do you still want cake?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Yes." "Okay," I said. "We'll get cake somewhere else." I took her hand and walked out. No yelling, no speech, just truth, leaving quietly. Behind us, Evelyn's wedding became a nightmare. By the following Monday, the video was everywhere. Charlotte everywhere. TikTok clips with dramatic captions, Instagram stories, Facebook neighborhood groups pretending to be shocked while hitting refresh. I didn't post. I didn't comment. I had a business to run and a child who needed her routine more than she needed viral drama. Then Wednesday, Rachel walked into my office holding papers like they were contaminated. "You've been served," she said. Of course I had. A process server came downstairs, asked for me by full name, and handed me a petition like this was an episode of Law and Order, Uptown. It wasn't some dramatic, terminate her rights nonsense. Real court isn't that theatrical. This was a petition to establish paternity and request custody and parenting time. Translation: we want access, and we're using the system to force it. They claimed I'd hidden Lily. They claimed I'd alienated Preston, which was impressive, considering Preston had done the disappearing all by himself. I called my attorney Andrew. He didn't gasp. He didn't lecture. He asked one question. "Do you have documentation?" I opened a drawer and pulled out a red folder. 2 years' worth, I said. "Good," Andrew replied. "Then we respond." A few weeks later, we were in family court. Family court is fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs, and people trying to sound reasonable while actively plotting. Preston sat with his lawyer looking stiff and exhausted, like the tuxedo had been replaced by regret. Evelyn sat beside him like a general beside a soldier, calm, controlled, offended by the concept of limits. Their attorney opened with the money speech: stability, resources, opportunities, best interests. Then came the accusation. I withheld the child. I undermined the father's role. Andrew didn't argue emotionally. He argued structurally. First, he slid forward sworn declarations from former household staff, people who watched Evelyn up close and remembered everything. Housekeepers, a driver, a nanny, not friends, not people who hate her. Employees who were there, who heard the words, who saw the pressure. Evelyn's mouth hardened. Their lawyer called it allegations. Andrew nodded, which is why we're prepared to call witnesses. Then came the second folder: public records, a second mortgage, debt, a line of credit. Not because debt makes you a bad parent, but because it made one thing obvious. Evelyn's motives weren't pure. When your main argument is resources, your finances are part of the story. Then Andrew placed the third document down. A trust created by Preston's late father, an education and health trust for future grandchildren, managed by a trustee, with certain distributions coordinated through the child's primary residential parent. Real American money doesn't sit in envelopes. It sits in legal structures. Evelyn didn't want Lily because she suddenly discovered grandma tenderness. She wanted Lily because Lily was leverage. The judge barely looked up, tired already. "We'll need a DNA test and temporary orders." Preston's lawyer wanted weekends immediately. Andrew said no. Lily didn't know him. We weren't treating her like a suitcase. The temporary plan landed where sane plans usually land: DNA test, short supervised visits to start, a step-up plan if things went well, and Preston was ordered not to allow Evelyn any contact with Lily during his parenting time unless we agreed in writing, or a judge later decided otherwise. Evelyn stared like she'd been told gravity was mandatory. Welcome to reality. The lab looked like every medical office in America. Beige walls, laminated posters about hydration, a receptionist who'd seen everything. Lily thought it was hilarious. "They're taking my spit?" "Yes," I said. "Science." "I'm a scientist," she declared proudly. Preston stood nearby, tense, holding his breath like guilt was oxygen. When the results came back, no one was shocked. Paternity confirmed. The judge didn't clap. Judges don't do that. The judge ordered a step-up plan built around Lily's life, not Preston's regrets. Preston's first visit happened at a supervised family center. Books, toys, a staff member nearby, everything designed to keep kids safe and adults honest. He showed up with a stuffed bunny and the expression of a man who realized he missed 5 years he can't buy back. Lily looked at him and asked, direct as always, "Are you my dad?" Preston froze, then nodded, eyes wet. "Yes." She considered that like she was deciding whether she liked a new cartoon. "Okay," she said. "Do you like pancakes?" He let out a shaky laugh. "I do." "Good," Lily said seriously. "Pancakes are important." And just like that, she gave him a doorway into her world. Evelyn wasn't there. She wasn't allowed. That was the first time I exhaled in weeks. A few weeks into the plan, Preston asked to talk. Just us. Andrew told me, public place, short, no drama. So we met at a busy coffee shop in South End, loud enough that manipulation couldn't bloom. Preston looked nervous. "Good," he said. "I want to understand." I stared at him. "Now you want to understand?" He swallowed. "I didn't know you went through with the pregnancy. My mother told me you handled it." I lifted a brow. "You knew I was pregnant. You didn't try to know what happened after." He rubbed his hands like he was cold. "My mother said you'd disappear and the money," I finished, dry. He flinched. "I'm sorry." Sorry is a small word. Sometimes it means something. Sometimes it's a Band-Aid on a broken bone. "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "I'm here to protect Lily." He nodded. "I want to be her dad." "You don't get to be her dad because you want it," I replied. "You get to be her dad if you show up consistently, and without your mother." Preston's jaw tightened. Then he nodded once. "I can do that." I didn't believe him yet, but Lily deserved the chance, as long as Evelyn stayed out. Evelyn tried to creep back in. A bouquet sent to my office. For Lily. From Grandma Evelyn. I returned it unopened. Then a settlement offer, money, NDA language, and a friendly plan that mysteriously gave Evelyn access. Andrew replied with one word. "No." Then came the social pressure. People I barely remembered calling me to say, "Evelyn is just emotional. She's hurting. She's a grandmother. I listened and said, if she wants a relationship, she can respect the court order. Then I hung up. Because women like Evelyn expect people to fold. They treat no like a negotiation. But I'm not 25 anymore. I'm a mother, and motherhood teaches you a brutal truth. Politeness is optional when your child is involved. Preston didn't get his perfect wedding. Kate didn't get a perfect husband. Evelyn didn't get her perfect narrative. And I didn't get revenge in the movie trailer way people fantasize about. I didn't scream. I didn't throw wine. I didn't ruin the cake. I just showed up with the truth holding my hand. The court gave me primary physical custody. Preston got structured parenting time that expanded slowly as Lily got comfortable. Evelyn got limits and consequences. Preston is still learning. Some days he's awkward. Some days he's trying so hard it's almost painful to watch. But he shows up. And Lily, glitter shoes, strong opinions, tiny lawyer energy, comes home and tells me things like, Dad makes heart pancakes, but they look like blobs. Then she adds, very serious, don't laugh. He's trying. And that's when I know Lily is going to be okay. Because she has something I didn't have back then. A mother who won't let anyone erase her. So when I think about that invitation, gold foil, perfumed paper, that smug little card, I don't feel hurt anymore. I feel amused. Evelyn tried to humiliate me as a discarded mistake. And instead, she introduced her entire world to the one truth she spent 5 years trying to bury. Funny how that works. So tell me, if you were me, would you have stayed home and protected your peace? Or would you have shown up, held your kid's hand, and let the truth do the talking? My sister picked up my 6-year-old and tossed her into the deep pool. She knew my daughter couldn't swim. My daughter screamed. I was the only one who jumped in to save her. After that, I didn't cry. I did this. 2 weeks later, their lives started to unravel. It was supposed to be a simple family weekend. Every disaster in my life starts with the words, family weekend. My daughter Aria was doing something brave, something tiny, ridiculous, ordinary, unless you were 6 years old and terrified of water. She was standing ankle-deep in the toddler splash pad behind our holiday rental, gripping my hand like the ground might swallow her. The water barely reached her toes, but her whole little body trembled. "You're doing great," I whispered. She nodded, breath shaky, towel waiting behind her like an escape plan. My sister Janelle's kids, Zach and Paige, were at the real pool, the deep one, launching themselves into it like caffeinated stunt doubles. They screamed, splashed, and caused small tsunamis with every cannonball. "Come on, Aria, it's just water," Zach yelled. Paige added, "You're such a chicken." Aria flinched like the droplets were bullets I shot Janelle the universal, "Your children are being demons" look. She shrugged without a hint of shame. "Relax, Leah. They're helping her toughen up." Right. That's how my sister parents, chaos as character development. My parents sat in plastic loungers nearby, nodding sagely like they were presiding over a TED Talk on bravery. "You baby her too much," my mother said. My father added, "Kids need a push." Of course I was the problem. That's just the family position on everything. Aria took a tiny step forward. 1 inch. That was all. Then she stepped back out, shaking and proud, and sat beside me wrapped in her towel. Honestly, my heart nearly burst. "Mom?" she whispered. "I did it." "Yes," I said. "You really did." And this is where a narrator with hindsight would warn you the peace was temporary. But I didn't know that yet. What I did know, I wasn't allowed to swim. Minor procedure, stitches, no water. Aria wasn't swimming either. full body fear, and the rental house had plenty to do besides the stupid pool. So when I stood and told her, "I'm going to use the bathroom. I'll be right back," nothing about it felt dangerous. She nodded, tucked into her towel like a baby chick, and stayed right where I left her. I walked off. Maybe 30 seconds, a minute at most. Then I heard it. A scream. Sharp. Pure panic. A child's scream. My child's scream. My heart dropped so hard it hurt I ran. I don't remember crossing the patio or the yard. I just remember reaching the pool and seeing the thing that should never happen to a terrified 6-year-old. Arya was in the deep end. My daughter, who panics when the bathwater touches her ears, was sinking, thrashing, choking, fighting for the surface. And my entire family, my parents, my sister, her husband, their children, stood around like spectators at a wildlife documentary. Zach and Paige were frozen on the edge. Fascinated, Derek clutched a beer. My parents looked mildly inconvenienced. And Janelle, arms crossed, expression annoyed. Not one of them reached for her. I didn't know how she got in. Slip? Trip? A push? I didn't have time to think. I dove. Clothes, shoes, stitches, the whole lot. The chlorine hit my wound like acid, but pain was a luxury I couldn't afford. I got to her and hauled her above the surface. Her sobs tore into my shoulder, hands gripping the fabric of my shirt as if she could fuse herself into my ribs. "Got you. I've got you," I kept whispering, though my voice shook. When we got out of the pool, she clung to me so tightly I could barely breathe. "How did she—" I asked, my voice already breaking. Arya gasped, trembling so violently I felt it in my bones. "Aunt Janelle, she picked me up. She threw me. I couldn't breathe." "She threw her—" I turned to Janelle, barely seeing her through the red fog in my head. "You threw my her?" Janelle rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Leah. This is how kids learn Zach and Paige are amazing swimmers. And you've seen those TikTok videos where instructors toss babies in? It works." "That," I said, choking on rage, "is not the same thing." My mother chimed in, tone dripping judgment. "You're overreacting." And my father, never one to miss an opportunity for disappointment. "You always make things worse with your dramatics." Arya's little voice broke against my shoulder. "I thought I was going to die. Please don't make me go in again." Something inside me shifted hard, cold, final. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even look at them again. I wrapped Arya tighter, grabbed our bags one-handed, and walked. "Leah!" Janelle yelled. "Oh my God, don't be so dramatic." I kept walking. People who look back still expect empathy. I didn't. Arya cried the first 10 minutes of the drive, then exhaustion swallowed her whole, and she fell asleep in the passenger seat. Damp hair sticking to her cheek, tiny fists still curled. I stared at the road ahead, hands locked on the wheel. I didn't cry. I did something else. 2 weeks later, their lives started to unravel. I wish I could say what Janelle did to Arya came out of nowhere, but if I'm being honest, it was the last chapter of a story that started decades ago. Growing up, I was the cautious one. That's the polite version. My family had other words. Scaredy cat. Too quiet. Overthinker. And my personal favorite, dramatic, said by people who have never recognized an emotion in their lives. My older sister, Janelle, she was the opposite. A tornado in human form. Climbed everything, jumped off anything, ran headfirst into danger like she had a death wish wrapped in confidence. My parents loved it. Look how brave she is! Fearless. Just like her mother. Meanwhile, I was the one saying, maybe don't sprint toward the cliff edge, and being told, stop being so negative, Leah. That was the parenting style. If you weren't reckless, you were wrong. My relationship with water was the first casualty. I didn't have a phobia like Arya, but I hated being splashed in the face and I hated waves. You would think a normal family would respect that. Mine enrolled me in swim club. 3 years, twice a week. Practice until she stops acting scared. Fear wasn't something to understand. It was something to punish. By high school, the roles were locked in. Janelle equals fearless star. Me equals fragile disappointment. You'd think adulthood would fix things, maybe with distance and therapy and, I don't know, a functioning prefrontal cortex. Nope. We grew up, but the dynamic didn't. Janelle became the adult version of a roller coaster. Exciting to watch, dangerous to ride, constantly on the brink of shutting down for safety violations. She chased thrills, trips, hobbies, adventures, and debt. My parents weren't far behind her, still throwing money at experiences while ignoring things like bills, budgets, or basic math. And me? I committed the family's greatest crime. I chose stability. I became an accountant, a job my parents described as soul-crushing and for people with no imagination. I bought a sensible car. I didn't go bungee jumping. I didn't buy kayaks. I didn't chase living life to the fullest, otherwise known as poor impulse control. The funny thing about stable people, we become the safety net for unstable ones. I paid emergency bills, covered temporary loans that lasted longer than some marriages, co-signed a loan for Janelle's flashy car because her credit score was basically arterial bleeding, put my name on my parents' mortgage extension because theirs was radioactive, and the whole time they mocked me. Leah, you're so boring. Loosen up. You need adventure in your life. It's amazing how people think you're dull while holding out their hands for help. Then Arya was born, and I recognized something in her immediately. Not fear exactly, but sensitivity, caution, careful observation. The things my family despised on sight. Her fear of water was intense, instinctive. When she was a toddler and bathwater touched her ears, she shook. Not theatrically, not for attention. Her body just reacted. I knew that feeling. Not as strong as hers, but enough to understand it wasn't a choice. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't weakness. But my family didn't see it that way. History doesn't just repeat in my family, it accelerates. The first time Arya refused to go near the beach, my mother sighed, "Oh, great, another one. Another sensitive child. Another one who wouldn't fit their mold." Janelle said, "Just dunk her. She'll get over it." I told her to stop giving 1950s parenting advice, but she laughed and said I was soft. Her kids, Zach and Paige, were the golden grandchildren. Confident swimmers, fearless jumpers, the kind who shout, "Watch this," before doing something that requires medical insurance. Every time they leapt into water, my parents clapped. Every time Arya hid behind me, they judged. "Look at the difference," Mom whispered once, not quietly. And that stung in a way I don't think she'll ever understand. But the worst part was this. I genuinely believed I could protect Arya by staying close, staying patient, staying calm. I genuinely believed they would never push her too far. I should have walked away from them years earlier, but I didn't. And because I didn't, they took the first chance they got to prove I was wrong. What happened next made the pool incident look gentle. By the time I pulled into our driveway after the pool incident, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys. Arya was asleep in the passenger seat, or more accurately, passed out from exhaustion. Little fists still curled like she was bracing for the water to pull her under again. My husband, Simon, opened the front door before I even reached it. One look at my face, then at Arya's wet hair and blotchy cheeks, and he froze. "What happened?" he whispered. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't have the strength. "Janelle threw her," I said flatly, "into the deep end." Simon went still. Not the dramatic kind of still, the dangerous kind. the kind that comes right before something explodes. She threw her? I nodded once. That was all it took. Simon's whole body clenched like he was trying not to punch the universe. I got Arya out of the car and carried her inside. Yes, carried, because even unconscious, she clung to me like I was the last dry place on earth. I laid her on her bed. She stirred, whimpered, then immediately relaxed only when she realized I was still there. The kind of reaction a child has when they've been truly terrified. I tucked her in gently. For the first time in my life, silence hurt. Simon sat beside me, voice low. What now? I looked at Arya's tiny shaking breaths, the trauma still visible even in sleep. Now, I said, we stop pretending they're normal. When I went downstairs, something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just permanently. I walked to my laptop, opened it, and, without fury, without shaking, began ending things. Step 1, the mortgage. Every month I'd been contributing to my parents' payments because family sticks together. Right, cancel. Step 2, the refinancing. They were counting on my income to secure a better rate when their fixed term ended. I removed myself from the application with a single click. Then I called the bank. A polite man answered, and I matched his politeness with icy calm. I need to withdraw my consent to co-sign my parents' renewal, I said. It's effective immediately. There was a short pause. That will affect their eligibility. Good, I said, and meant it. Next, Janelle's car. Ah, yes. The car. The flashy, impractical, high-payment monstrosity she loved bragging about. The one she couldn't afford without my signature floating under it like a financial life raft. I called the loan company. I'm removing my authorization for payment guarantees, I said. Another pause. Another polite voice. That will put the account at risk. Perfect. I wasn't cutting them off, I was handing their lives back to them. The next morning it began. I wasn't even done pouring coffee before my phone started vibrating like it was possessed. Mom calling. Decline. Dad calling. Decline. Janelle calling. Decline. Then all three at once. I sighed and answered before the house woke up. The noise was instant. What did you do? The bank is saying, we can't afford this. Are you insane? You're overreacting. That was nothing. She just needed... I didn't speak. I let the chaos burn itself out. Then, when they paused long enough to breathe, I said one sentence. She could have died because of you. A beat of silence, and then, of course, laughter. Laughter. Mom. You're so dramatic. Dad. You always exaggerate. Janelle. If you hadn't jumped in, she'd probably be swimming by now. Swimming. My 6-year-old child who screams if bathwater hits her ears. I hung up mid-sentence. I didn't want to hear what came next. I already knew the script. I'd lived it my whole life. When I went back upstairs, Arya was awake, curled into a tight ball at the edge of her bed. She flinched when the bathroom faucet dripped. She asked, tiny and trembling, "Is the water going to come out fast?" "No," I said gently. "Can I skip the shower?" "Of course." She hesitated, then whispered, "The water pulled me. I thought it wanted me." I sat beside her and wrapped her in my arms. "They think bravery is jumping off cliffs," I murmured. "They don't understand the courage it took for you to stand in that tiny splash pad yesterday." She leaned into me, and for a moment, everything was still, but not peaceful. Not yet. That night, while Simon made dinner, I watched Arya at the table, trying to color. Her hands shook, but she kept coloring anyway, a tiny act of persistence, a tiny act of bravery no one but me would ever understand. "She's braver than any of them," I said under my breath. Simon looked up, confused. I shook my head. Nothing. The truth was too big to say out loud. I thought pulling her out of the pool was the end of it, that I'd done the hard part, that the nightmare was over. But trauma doesn't end when the danger ends, and families like mine, they don't apologize, they retaliate. I didn't know it that night, watching Arya press her crayon a little too hard against the paper. I didn't know they were already planning something worse, something loud, something reckless, something that would change everything again. But I'd learn soon, because 2 weeks later, they didn't just ignore a boundary, they crossed one I didn't even know could be crossed. And when they did, all hell broke loose. The school parking lot was half empty when I pulled in that afternoon. I was humming, an actual hum, something light, because for once, after 2 weeks of nightmares and whispered reassurances, Arya had slept through the night I walked into the office expecting the same routine we'd done 100 times. Sign in, smile at the secretary, go home. Instead, the secretary looked up and said the sentence that dropped me straight out of my own body. "Oh, you just missed her. She was picked up early." Everything inside me froze. Picked up by who? She glanced at the form on her clipboard like it was nothing, her grandmother and aunt. It was on her emergency contact list. My heart punched my ribs so hard I swear I heard it. My parents. Janelle. The people I had just cut off. The people who had nearly drowned my child. The people I explicitly told to stay away. I couldn't breathe. "They're not allowed to pick her up," I managed. "Not anymore." The secretary blinked, confused but not alarmed. "Well, they were on the list, so—" I didn't let her finish. I was already dialing. I called my mother. No answer. I called my father. No answer. I called Janelle. Straight to voicemail. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I called again. And again. And again. Nothing. I felt something inside me split open. Not fear, not anger. Something worse. Something cold. Something that whispered, "You know what they're capable of." I dialed 911. "My 6-year-old daughter has been taken without permission," I said. My voice was thin, almost clinical. Her last contact with these people resulted in physical endangerment. I need help. Now. The dispatcher didn't waste time. Officers were on their way. For the first time that day, I breathed. Not deeply, just enough to stay upright. The officers arrived at the school in minutes. I retold everything in quick, clipped sentences. No crying, no dramatics, just facts. "They had emergency permission for true emergencies only," I said. "They've never used it. Ever. Until today. And they knew they weren't supposed to take her?" "Yes." "And you believe she's in danger?" I thought of Arya's screams when she hit the water, her trembling hands, her nightmares. "Yes," I said. "I absolutely do." They didn't question it. One officer stepped aside to radio dispatch. The other asked for descriptions, phone numbers, vehicle details, everything I could give. Simon arrived 10 minutes later, practically skidding into the lot. "What happened?" he demanded. I didn't even answer. The look on my face told him everything. Then the radio crackled. "Location found." My stomach dropped. A community swimming pool. Of course. Of course. Janelle had taken Arya, my water-phobic, traumatized 6-year-old, to another pool. I didn't think I didn't breathe. I just ran to the car. The officers followed. Simon drove like the road was dissolving under us. I kept seeing Arya's face from 2 weeks ago. Bluish lips, eyes wide, clinging to me with shaking hands. I couldn't lose her again, not even for a second. When we pulled up, my legs nearly gave out. I didn't wait for the officers. I didn't wait for Simon. I sprinted through the lobby, through the changing area, through the echoing mess of tile and chlorine. And then I heard it. Crying. Small high. Panicked. My daughter. I ran so fast I slipped on the wet floor, but I got there, and what I saw made something in me snap clean in half. Arya was backed into a corner of the pool deck, clutching a dry towel to her chest like armor. Tears streaked down her face. Her whole body shook. My parents stood nearby. Janelle was next to them, and beside her was a man I'd never seen, a swim instructor by the look of his goggles and shirt. They weren't throwing her in again. This time, they were trying to coach her, force her, convince her that the problem was her fear, not their cruelty. "We're trying to help her," my mother snapped before I said a word. "She needs to learn to swim," Dad added. "She'll thank us one day," Janelle chimed in, voice bright and poisonous. I didn't yell, didn't scream. I just said, "Arya." She looked up. The second she saw me, she ran, full sprint, into my arms, sobbing so hard she hiccuped. I lifted her, held her tight, and turned to the officer behind me. "That's my daughter," I said. "I did not give permission for this." The officer stepped between me and my family. My mother spluttered, "We're family!" He held up a hand. "Ma'am, you were not authorized to take this child. You'll need to step back." Janelle scoffed. "Are you kidding? We're fixing her fear. Leah is the problem. Always has been." The officer looked at me. "You want to press custodial interference?" "Yes," I said. "Immediately." My parents froze. Janelle's mouth fell open. "You wouldn't do that," she hissed. "You threw my child into a pool," I said. "And today you took her from school without permission, so yes, I absolutely would." The rest moved fast. Statements, warnings, a formal report. A very awkward moment when the instructor realized he'd been pulled into a family meltdown and quietly exited the building. Arya clung to me the whole time. She refused to look at any of them. Not once. When it was finally done and the officers walked us to the car, she whispered, "Can we go home now?" I kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby. We're going home." That night, while Simon sat with Arya and read her a story, I filed the cease and desist, removed every emergency pickup permission, cut the final strings of financial tethering. Mortgage, gone. Car, gone. All access, gone blocked, permanently. I didn't care if they screamed, I didn't care if they spiraled, and I definitely didn't care if their lives fell apart. They crossed the line, and I was done. Arya fell asleep in her own bed, breathing slowly, safely, deeply. I stood in the doorway, the light from the hall catching the soft curve of her cheek, and thought, if this is what protecting her costs, I'd pay it 1,000 times. And then I closed her door. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Blocked numbers, all of them. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Tomorrow would take care of itself. But for the first time in weeks, I knew this. They were finished. And we were finally free. 3 years later, I barely recognize the life we live now. Quiet, steady, almost boring in the best possible way. There's a baby in the house now, toddling around with fists full of crackers and a talent for chaos. Arya adores him. She's 9, taller, still cautious, still sensitive, but peaceful. A different child than the one shaking in my arms in that pool. As for my family, they folded fast. Janelle lost her car within months. The repo truck came at dawn, and judging from the screaming voice memo she left me, it was a performance worthy of an Oscar. My parents tried to refinance their mortgage without my name. Spoiler, it didn't happen. Their payments doubled overnight. Within a year, the house was gone, sold off in a panic, then replaced with a cramped rental on the edge of a town where no one knows them and no one cares. Their social circle evaporated too. Turns out word about that pool incident traveled faster than chlorine. I didn't have to lift a finger. They did all the unraveling themselves. Meanwhile, Arya healed slowly. Baths became tolerable again. Then showers. She still wouldn't go near a pool, and I didn't push it. Not once. But courage has a quiet way of showing up when you least expect it. A few months ago, we were at a kiddie pool with the baby. Shallow water, barely ankle deep. He slipped. Just a little stumble, but enough to make him yelp. I froze. For a heartbeat, I was back in that backyard, watching her drown. But Arya? She moved first. She ran straight into the water, scooped her brother up under his arms, and held him until he stopped crying. Her knees were shaking. Her voice was trembling. But she did it. She didn't even look back to see if I was coming. It wasn't deep. It wasn't dangerous. But for her, it was a mountain. She hasn't lost her fear. But now she knows, with absolute certainty, that she can rise above it when someone needs her. Fear didn't make her weak. Love made her brave. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.